Hey class, we're on to week 4, chapter 6. We're going to be discussing ethics. So, what does ethics have to do with public relations? Well, public relations and communication is relational, right? We've talked about this. So, we are communicating to someone and we are basically asking them for their trust. Um, and for them to give us their trust, we have to provide credibility, right? And suggest that we're ethical in earning that trust. Um, what makes this more dicey, if you will, is that the tools that we have in communication, the tools of manipulation, the tools of persuasion, the tools of information, the power of information, these tools can be used to inform people, persuade people, or manipulate people, right? Inform and persuade. Inform is certainly not negative. Persuade, depending on how you're doing it and what you're persuading them, is neutral, and manipulation is, of course, negative. So, when you have the ability to manipulate because of the tools you have, social media, the use of celebrity to sway people in how they're thinking, the ability to send information that's not correct. When you have those tools, there's an ethical responsibility that falls upon you, and so that's what we're going to be discussing today. Okay, um, credibility. The pillar of public relations. Seitel talks about it. You'll in any reading of any kind of marketing, public relations, branding, credibility is important. Credibility is um, that well that you have built up, that well of trust that you have built up with the public, that gives you the leeway to say what you're going to say, and they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, or in many cases believe you. Okay, ethics is paramount to credibility. All right, and when someone provides you the credibility that you've been working on, it comes from an ethical point of view. I mean, it's the same with relationships, right? I mean, we trust those that are close to us because they've demonstrated that we can trust them. It's the same concept. There are several definitions to ethics, but it's important to note that ethics means different things to different people, different cultures, different generations, um, different faiths, different political ideals. Um, Ethics takes on a different form. And so when we say ethics, we can't assume that everyone's thinking of the same thing. Okay? Um, the Josephson Institute, ethics is the standards of conduct that indicate how one should behave based on moral duties and values. Okay? It's a pretty good definition. I would think that it sums it up. However, it's a moving target, right? Because when you look at it in perspective, what are these standards based off? What are the standards of conduct based off of? It's a moving target because it changes. It changes because of the times. It changes because of the culture. Um, right now, most of us eat meat. Okay, I mean that's been going on for thousands of years. 500 years from now, it's very possible that the people 500 years from now might look back at us and say we were barbarians, that we were cruel, that we were evil. 500 years from now, animals may be viewed as the same moral equivalent as a human being, and therefore we will have looked in the 21st century as murdering animals, and we could be looked at as an incredibly evil, deviant, unethical society. Certainly don't view it now, but that can change. Krautheimer and Moynihan, former Senator Moynihan and Charles Krautheimer, who's a columnist and a thought leader, both worked on and did literature based on deviancy up and deviancy down. And it's the concept that our understanding of deviancy and what is accepted in the norm is a bar, and that bar is constantly changing. And society will move that bar to accept or not accept what it wants as the norm during that time. And so deviancy, which is often viewed as a negative thing, actually means working outside of the norm. So if we all wear hats, right, and everyone wears a hat, and somebody chooses not to wear a hat, technically they're deviant because they are deviating from the norm. Krautheimer and Moynihan talked to this more about the bar of morality. And so we see that in ethics today. And we see it constantly moving in communication. And again, it comes down to the fact that people look at communicators, whether it's the media, whether it's in marketing and advertising, they look at us and expect us to tell them the truth. Okay? When you go to buy a car, you know that the car salesman might embellish a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're expecting that this car is going to do what he or she said it's going to do. Right? It's that same thing. We understand that the media might embellish a bit, but at the end of the day, we expect them to be honest with us. That's not the case anymore. And so as you've read, and as we'll talk about a little bit more, that's what we're dealing with. So it brings us into the ethical concepts, right? So we talk about how ethics varies. A couple different ways of looking at how ethics is viewed. Utilitarianism. Okay, we talked about that. Or it's talked about in the book. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. There is a purpose or an objective that is going to benefit the majority. And therefore, if the minority, small minorities, whatever it might be, if they don't benefit from this, it's unfortunate, but so be it, because we are here for the collective. Okay, you find this in revolutions. The Bolshevik Revolution, the French Revolution, where they felt like they were empowered because they had the majority's good intentions, right? For you sci-fi people, Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, right? The good of the many outweigh the good of the few, or the one, right? So, inside joke, some of you will get it. But utilitarianism is a popular view. Deontology is another one that Seitel mentions on, where it's this thing where someone's going to do right no matter what. Conscientious objectors in the military, you'll see this, where it doesn't matter. You can shoot me. I'm not going to pick up a gun and kill my fellow man. Okay, that is another form of viewing how ethics are viewed. A Machiavellian approach. The means ends justify the means. We will do whatever it takes to get here. And if that means that we have to do terrible things for the greater good, we will do that. Of course, the problem with the ends justifies the means is who determines that the means is good, right? It feeds into Mill's principle of utility, right? That says it seeks the greater happiness for the greatest number, okay, which is kind of like the foundation of a lot of these. But it begs the question, who determines what happiness is, right? Dictatorships in Cuba and North Korea will tell you that their dictatorships are for the good of the people. We know this isn't true. Okay, these cultures are failing. They're starving in North Korea. But the leaders of these nations would tell you that these dictatorships are proper. Okay, so depending on where you are, the perspectives on ethics is different. So, in public relations, we focus on applied ethics, right? It's the commonly accepted sense of professional conduct. Okay, and so in public relations, this is translated into a formal code of ethics. You have corporate codes of ethics, where it's a formal statement of values that the business practices as a corporation. We have corporate social responsibility. That's a big thing now. Businesses seeking impacts on society. Wasn't as popular before social media came about, but now they have a in the 1980s, if you were Pepsi and you were going to do projects to help society, it was kind of difficult to advertise that. How are people knowing this? Unless it's going on in your direct area, how are people knowing you're doing this? They would actually have to hire and spend money with either public relations internally or public relations externally to actually explain what they're doing. Now with social media, it's very easy. It's very easy to let the world know that you're wonderful. Okay, and so it's more popular now. The issue with some of that is it's both positive and negative, I would think. So it is a slippery slope in the private sector when corporations get into some of this value work, right? And we now see the cancel culture, where if a company's doing something they don't like, they're going to cancel it. You've seen on both sides of the aisle, okay, and on both political spectrums. It tends to alienate people. And so some businesses, I think, are smart in saying, look, we're just not getting into politics. We're not doing this. Others will double down. The NFL doubled down, and the NFL has lost quite a large following. Um, on the other side, My Pillow, right? If anyone knows the guy with My Pillow, he was a big Trump supporter. He doubled down. He said, "I'm not apologizing for this." Now people want to cancel My Pillow. Um, so there is a cost at getting into this corporate social justice movement, if you will. But that is all part of the code of conduct that has now been prevalent under a lot of these organizations, public relations organizations. So, just a little on that. I want to get into ethics in journalism. Many would argue that that's an oxymoron. I'm one of them. Competition among journalists and agendas, especially with the rise of social media, has somewhat decimated journalism. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been working with reporters since the 90s. I've seen a change. And when I talk to people of the old guard that are much older than me, they have seen a change as well. It's concerning. It's disappointing. But the truth is that now in this day and age, media is relying on getting attention. Media is relying on getting clicks. Most things going on in the world are not nefarious. Most things going on in the world are not scandalous and exciting. They're rather boring, they're rather mundane, and they're rather usual. Every year Congress has a 30-some% approval rating, no matter who controls it. So you can ask yourself, wow, are they really that incompetent? Maybe. Or do people constantly get fed the same thing from the media every single year, which is consternation and fighting and gridlock and all of these types of things? Interestingly enough, if you look at the votes passed in Congress every year, overwhelmingly, they pass with bipartisan measures. Overwhelmingly. Every week there are bills that pass with large bipartisan support. Media doesn't talk about those. They're boring. The media will talk, however, about the fights and the gridlock and the bills that just barely pass. When that's all you hear about, you're certainly going to think that it's a dysfunctional body. And I'm not saying it's not a dysfunctional body. I mean, I work there. It is. But it's not, we're our own dysfunction, right? It's not quite what you see in the media. But again, the media isn't a competition for clicks. The media is not a competition for sales. The journalism industry has taken a hit, and now you do not have a lot of people in journalism that have been around for a while. They simply don't get paid a lot of money. And so you're getting people that are coming out of journalism school, and they're going right into the field. They're not that experienced, and they're influencing what people are reading and what people are seeing and what people are hearing. And a lot of them are activists. So you're not going into journalism to make money, and you're not going into journalism anymore for the integrity of the art. You're going into journalism because you're an activist. And so when you get activists going into journalism, you're going to get the fringes from both sides. So instead of a middle where they are going to objectively report, you're getting people with strong opinions who are editorializing in their reporting. That is a problem, and that's not ethical, okay? So let's apply this. All right, I'm trying to keep these shorter. I know they've been longer in the past couple of weeks. We see a utilitarian approach in voting. So remember, utilitarian approach is do what it takes for the greater good. Okay. Let's look at the election in 2016. There were many people who loathed Hillary Clinton. They just did not like her. But they voted for her. They voted for her because they didn't want Donald Trump. So they said, I'm going to plug my nose and I'm going to vote for her because she's, at the end of the day, so much better than Trump. Conversely, on the other side, you had many people who loathed Trump, but at the same time could not fathom that crook Hillary Clinton in the White House. Many of these were Christians, strong conservative Christians, who turned the other way and said, I'm going to give Trump a pass on his moral failures. I'm going to give Trump a pass on his ethical failures. and I'm going to elevate him because I support the platform that he advocates. And that's exactly what happened. And I will say that, as Christian conservatives will tell you, it worked. They got 3 Supreme Court justices on that court in Trump's 4 years. Conservative justices. They had pro-life policies that were put in play. They had a lot of conservative ideals that were moved forward by a very imperfect man. They took a utilitarian approach, and in this case, for them, it worked. Okay. Finally, just going back to some things on journalism. So, a good friend of mine used to be a reporter for one of the local DC papers. His job was, he was one of these reporters that got out quick stories, and they were all posted online. On the wall in the big reporting room, they have what was called a clipboard. And it had their name, and it was like a marquee. And it registered how many stories they posted in that day, and it updated how many clicks they were getting on their stories. He said it reminded him of these telemarketers who are in a room calling and trying to make sales. And the first one to hit 50 is going to get a ticket to the Redskins game. That's not good, folks. That's not good, because what's driving you to do your reporting? Not the truth, not what you know, but what can I write about that is going to get clicks? Okay. Something to think about. And for those of you who are getting into this area, hold your ethics tight. Okay? You're going to do the country good. So, all right, great. Well, make sure you do the readings on this, and have a good week. Thanks.